entitled to due process of law.
All kinds
you
of
couldn't send them to prison without the same kind of a trial that a man would get.
But again, it comes back to changing times. The founding fathers were never going to have any reason at that time to consider a woman's right to keep a baby or to have an abortion. It wouldn't have even entered their minds, would it?
I don't know why. Why wouldn't it?
Because at the time it was just...
They didn't have wives and daughters that they cared about?
They did, but it was not an issue that they would ever consider framing in the Constitution.
I don't know.
But when women began to take charge in the last century of their lives and their rights and so on, and began to fight for these, everybody believed that was the right thing to do, didn't they? I mean, why would you be instinctively against that?
My view is, regardless of whether you think prohibiting abortion is good or whether you think prohibiting abortion is bad, regardless of how you come out on that, my only point is the Constitution does not say anything about it. It leaves it up to democratic choice. Some states prohibited it, some states didn't. What Roe versus Wade said was that no state can prohibit it. That is simply not in the Constitution. It was one of those many things, most things in the world, left to democratic choice. And the court does not do democracy a favor when it takes an issue out of democratic choice simply because it should not be there.
How do you, as a conservative Catholic, how do you not bring your personal sense of what is right and wrong to that kind of decision? Because clearly, as a conservative Catholic, you're going to be fundamentally against abortion.
Just as the pro-choice people say the Constitution prohibits the banning of abortion, so also the pro-life people say the opposite. They say that the Constitution requires the banning of abortion because you're depriving someone of life without due process of law. I reject that argument just as I reject the other one. The Constitution, in fact, says nothing at all about the subject. It is left to democratic choice. Now, regardless of what my views as a Catholic are, the Constitution says nothing about it.
What has been your hardest decision, do you think?
My hardest?
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
I do want to know.
No, it's the dullest case imaginable. There is no necessary correlation between the difficulty of a decision and its importance. Some of the most insignificant cases have been the hardest.
What has been the one that
It'd probably be a patent case. You want me to describe it really?
No, of course. Right, what has been, in your view, the most contentious? What's the one that most people ask you about?
Contentious? Well, I guess the one that created most waves of disagreement was Bush versus Gore. Okay, that comes up all the time, and my usual response is get over it.
Get over the possible corrupting of the American presidential system. Justice Scalia?
Look my court didn't bring the case into the court. It was brought into the courts by Al Gore. He is the one who wanted courts to decide the question. When Richard Nixon thought that he had lost the election because of chicanery in Chicago, he chose not to bring it into the courts. But Al Gore wanted the courts to decide it. So the only question in Bush versus Gore was whether the presidency would be decided by the Florida Supreme Court or by the United States Supreme Court. That was the only question, and that's not a hard one.
No regrets?
Oh, no regrets at all, especially since it's clear that the thing would have ended up the same way anyway. The press did extensive research into what would have happened if what Al Gore wanted done had been done county by county, and he would have lost anyway.
When people say about you that you're this fantastic justice, no one disputes that, and incredibly charismatic, and you ask the most questions. Apparently you get...
I don't ask the most questions.
No, apparently
I don't
you
ask
do.
the most. No, that's not true.
Apparently somebody has counted over the last 25 years.
No.
You are the guy that asks the most questions.
No, I used to be.
You're more than Justice Thomas, right?
That's a low bar.
I mean, is it just me that thinks it's a bit weird that a guy can join the Supreme Court and literally not ask any questions?
No, that's not so unusual. Thurgood Marshall rarely asked a question. Bill Brennan rarely asked questions. No. In fact, a lot of them didn't ask. I was the first one who started asking a lot of questions. I appeared before the court once before I became a judge. I was serving in the Justice Department, and I got 2 questions the whole time of my argument. They both came from Byron White. It was not at all unusual for justices not to ask questions.
Let's take another break.
So leave.
In fairness,
Leave Clarence alone.
In fairness to Justice Thomas, he has a principled reason. I mean, he told me in his interview, and this is all on the record, he does not ask questions because he thinks it's too cacophonous. There are too many questions as it is, and he doesn't want to add to the cacophony.
That's one way of looking at it. Let's take another break. Let's come back, and I want to get into you.